When this was probably about a few years ago. I was hired by my friend Vance Black Fox for a program that he had running through through Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago called Youth and Mission. And so, in this trip, because I went on this trip with him twice, not the same exact trip, but um, he asked me to document their time. And we went to Texas. And one of the lessons that he was teaching was about state markers. Or not state markers, but those historical markers, where a key event or place or person or whatever happened, and the historical marker is making note of that. And he just had us all read what was actually inscribed. And after reading what was inscribed, how were the people that were affected looked upon, or how do you think they felt in that situation? I thought it was interesting because it was showing you a perspective that you just kind of glossed over. But these words, the way they used them, the way they were put in and phrased, and they were inscribed into cement or ceramic or whatever it is to weather the storms that come through. So it was like they were immortalized. And for those that are not white, reading the way that it is written about their people in that situation, in that historical moment, can have a diverse effect. And he was just trying to show you how you can look, how history is situated, how history is really told from one perspective when there's many facets to it. Now, I'm not doing another video specifically on history, but I think when the term cancel culture comes up, I think this is exactly what we need to look at as white people. I've been very blessed in the travels that I've had, and this is the situations that we gloss over all the time. We don't really think twice. Why? Because it doesn't affect us. And I think that this cancel culture, if that's the terminology now, but people saying that we are erasing our history, I think really we're not looking at it in the right context. So I'm going to look at it in three different ways in which this is being brought up today. First and foremost, there's the Confederate situation. I talked about the Confederacy in a previous video. I'm not going to harp on it, but the fact that these Confederate monuments, statues, places, such as parks and schools and such, with the names of men who created not only horrific atrocities against human beings, both selling and trading and beating and murdering, but they also fought as one against our Union of the United States of America, and to glorify who they are, who they were, and keep that memory alive, I think is a disservice to the majority of America, and a lot of it has not even been perpetuated during their time, but our time, the 20th century. I know that we're in the 21st century. We're almost a quarter of way through the 21st century. The fact that we are talking about a situation that was squashed 150 plus years ago, and we have to talk about honoring the people who were the losers. Because the adage is, history is written by the winners. Well, what's the deal here? And those who say that we shouldn't ignore history, I'm not saying we should erase the history. We have to remember what we did wrong as a nation. We broke apart. We fought against each other. We brought each other back, but we cannot perpetuate the same things. But we're not learning if we don't move on. And I think that's the whole premise, is the fact that we're not learning, and we're not only that, but we're perpetuating the subjugation of our neighbors and fellow Americans, ones that have fought and built and deserve to be here as much as anybody else. Maybe even more so. And that takes me to the next one, which is about subjugation again, but that of the native peoples or American Indians. And taking down the statues there, because a friend of mine, he goes, well, I understand the taking down of Confederate statues, but why are people taking down Ulysses S. Grant statues? He was big opponent of slavery. And I agreed. I said, I don't really know. And I should have known. I knew about a part of his legacy, but not the whole part of his anti-Native American legacy. And what he did during his presidency to the Native peoples by what he put out there as president, and then had it even expanded on through George Custer, a native of Michigan. In fact, his statue is in Monroe, Michigan. Why that's not being talked about being taken down, I have no idea. Because Custer is obviously, if you were an American Indian, especially in the plains, I don't know what to say. That is I can't speak for the folks. I've been out there. I've seen where folks live, and I see some of the results of that. But yeah, it just boggles my mind, and I've always wondered that. Why are we glorifying George Custer? Yes, he was a Civil War hero. Yes, that is a fact. However, what he did to perpetuate the massacre and genocide of our American Indian brothers and sisters is not something you can slight. And therefore, you have to look at Ulysses S. Grant in that same light. Are they Civil War heroes on the side of the Union? Yes. But what they did in their positions of power, in white power, positions of white supremacy, is horrid. And that brings me to the third one, with the colonial aspect of it. And I'm not talking about colonial, revolutionary era, colonial America. I'm talking about Columbus in and of itself. Somebody who never really set foot on North American soil, and he's got statues and cities and parks named after us. Columbus Circle, Columbus, Ohio. Big Columbus statue in New York City. Now, I'm of Italian American descent, but I didn't grow up in an Italian American neighborhood or anything like that, so I didn't have the same pull to Christopher Columbus, who is really thought of as the only Italian American I don't even know what to say, because he was from Italy, but he wasn't a part of American history as it should be told. Um, and so, and where I grew up, I mean, which had a heavy Native American population there. Not a lot, but but Columbus Day to me as an Italian American just didn't ring true like, for others that I knew, that I met later on. However, Columbus is not a good person to glorify, no matter if he's the only Italian historical figure, which I know that we can find more. I know as an Italian American or Italian Americans, you get lopped in with, like mobsters, the mafia, Tony Soprano, all that stuff, and I understand that that's not something you kind of want to be related to, but at the same time, or your legacy, like Al Capone or Lucky Luciano, these are names in American history that's not, you don't want to play history with, but, and and I understand moving towards Columbus because he was a discoverer, but his story is so flawed. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on all that, but I understand the cancel culture and why it's not necessarily canceling our history, but maybe even looking at reconciling it. And it's no longer left unsaid.